Hello and welcome, my dear friend. This story starts with a plain wooden box. A cheap one like this one that I got from Michael's for only $7. I think right now it's on sale for under $5. Yes, it's a little flimsy, but after the treatment that we'll give it, it'll be worth so much more that you can even give it to your family and friends for the holidays, or keep it for yourself and store your favorite things in there like paints, markers, yogi tea wisdom, snail clippings, shiny rocks, etc. It does need a little preparation before we pour the paint on it, so give it a generous layer of gesso. I'm using black gesso because it matches the inside of my cold stolid heart, but you can use white if you want. The wood is quite porous, and if you don't gesso it first, it will speedily absorb the paint that you're about to pour on it. Besides, the more layers of paint, the thicker and sturdier our box will be in the end. If you'd like to be able to open your box after you pour the paint on it, I recommend taping the upper and lower seams of the box with some painter's tape. Otherwise, paint will seep between the lids and seal it shut forever, and you'll never be able to open it again. Ask me how I know that. Then comes the fun part, the pouring of the paint part. You can use any fluid paints to do this. You can buy pre-mixed fluid paints, but I like to mix my own because it's cheaper and you can use whatever acrylic paint colors you have on hand and love to use. There's a certain pleasure in mixing your own paints, like making waffles from scratch, as opposed to buying a mix or, God forbid, buying frozen waffles. I don't know what that would be the equivalent in an artist's world. Color by numbers? To mix your own, you will either need an acrylic pouring medium or Floetrol. You can buy this at your favorite home improvement store or Amazon. You will mix your acrylic paints with this paint additive to a ratio of 1 part paint and 2 parts pouring medium, roughly. If the paint feels too thick, you can dilute it a bit more. I love using metallic paints for pouring on boxes like gold, bronze, copper, metallic, teal, and green or silver. This was actually a live demonstration that I performed a couple of weeks ago on a Friday on this very channel, around 11 a.m. Oh, and if you're wondering, I am using Floetrol for all of my recipes. And you can see the full video, how I layered the paints and everything. If you're interested, I left a link in the description along with all the tools and materials that you will need to do this yourself. You can use a variety of techniques to pour on these boxes. I like the straight pour because, well, it's a classic now. You just pour the paint straight onto the canvas and it generally produces some really nice results. Aside from the metallic paints, which I am just demonstrating right now, I also love the black-red combo. I've found that it's a humdinger of a color combo. The only trick is to not let the red get annihilated by the black. That's why I added a little white to support the red from behind and give it some brightness. The ring pour is also a nice easy one for the beginner. It resembles the rings of a tree. The only difference between the straight pour and the ring pour is that the straight one is static and the ring has a slight whirlpooling circular motion. Sometimes I use the last little bit of paint to create some ribbons at the end, essentially adding a little dimension by overlapping some strands of paint on top of those rings. This can look a bit three-dimensional, and I always enjoy the look. And as you've seen before, I always like to stretch the paint so that it covers the edges. This will give the boxes a more finished look, and it'll really pull everything together. Now, you don't have to cover every single bit of corner. You can leave some negative space there. You can't go wrong with the Cosmic Flip Cup, I always say, although I don't generally put metallics in this method. I actually had a swipe in mind for these colors anyway, so I'm not attached to the result when I pull up the cup and reveal what I call the oyster. Not so much of an oyster in this one though. Not very eventful in there. The colors are beautiful. Most of these paints are paints that I have mixed from different colors. I had some leftover paints that I strained and cleaned up. Then to do the swipe, we add a little bit of silicone oil and mix slightly only in the black paint. And then with a clean palette knife, you just swipe and glide that black paint on top of the underneath paint, and it leaves these beautiful lacing patterns that resemble dragon scales or lace or cells, I don't know. And then I stretch the paint a little bit so that it covers the sides of my box. Then Andy, who was watching with me the whole time, she asked for another swipe with the red and black combo and the white, so this one is for Andy. And thanks for hanging out with me during the live stream. It was really fun having you on. These red and white colors do not have any silicone in them. They are just paint, and then the black is the one that has the silicone. And then I just did the swipe just like previously. When you do a swipe, it's really important to not push the paint down too much. You basically just want to smooth the top of it with that black paint, just like frosting a cake. Don't go too deep on the bottom, otherwise you risk scraping the paint off, and that's really not what we're trying to do. But anyway, this produced a pretty interesting result. At one point it was looking like there was a dragon head in there. Pretty interesting. I'm gonna point it out probably. There it is. And one last one, I'm doing a monochromatic with just black and white and all kinds of shades of gray. This is one of my favorite color combinations. Not really so much of a color, but kind of like a cloudy day. Very low key and just relaxing for the eyes to look at. And what I call the surge. I thought of calling this method the throw, but anyway, I always really enjoy the way this method looks, and it's so very easy to do. Look at all those interesting patterns and textures. After the boxes were dry a couple of days later, I opened them very carefully. A thin metal palette knife came in handy to help pry the boxes open. I meant to record this in real time, but only the next day did I realize that the camera was accidentally set on time-lapse. Well, after opening the boxes, I painted the interior black. Just black. I was considering to add a metallic or iridescent layer on top, but I just wanted to keep it simple this time, and you know, black goes with anything. Eventually it goes with everything. I only painted the sides and left the large areas open because they will get furnished with some felt anyway. The varnishing is one of the most satisfying parts. It makes the paint more vibrant, shiny, smooth, and protects the surface. I'm using Liquitex gloss varnish. It's recommended to apply at least 2 coats of varnish, and I like to go for 3 or 4 for boxes like these. The more varnish, the more protection. Just use a medium-large brush with flexible bristles, apply evenly, and don't go back to a tacky drying layer with a brush. If you miss the spot, just let it dry and apply another even coat when it's fully dried. Let your varnish dry for a few hours to a day between reapplication. Next step is to slightly wax the edges of the box where the upper lid meets the lower lid to prevent any type of stickiness. The varnish is totally dry, but it can still take weeks for it to be totally cured, and better to be safe than sticky. I just use regular candle wax for that. After a day or 2 after the last coat, you can now finish your box with some felt on the bottom and inside the box to make it inviting and lush. I had some stick back felt And I also had some regular type felt, and then I had some this beautiful black velvet that was peel back sticky sticky back peel. Anyway, it came in handy for these boxes. I kind of had to do the inside because of my laziness. You see, if I had sand in my boxes before I started the whole process, it wasn't completely necessary. But since I didn't, some of the boxes were quite rough, especially on the interior, where I didn't apply so many coats of paint and varnish, so I still had to do the extra work, and it's totally worth it. It looks better with that fancy black velvet on the interior anyway. And that's the whole story. Will you give acrylic pouring a try? Will you try to pour on some boxes? Actually, I have an old ugly box that is pretty sturdy but totally needs a makeover, and another one that is a failed pour that I can totally redecorate. I already know what to do. And my friend, it's my pleasure and vocation to always be busy and share the fruits of my fevered imagination with you, because I can't sit still for fear of hearing the contents of my own mind at all times. It's good to be busy. What will tomorrow bring? Probably something new, because my limited attention can't be having with doing the same thing all the time. Probably some resin crafts. I don't know. Stay tuned and find out. Gently caress that subscribe button and fondle the like button if you like this video and want to see more stuff like this, and stuff that is not exactly like this. Stuff being made, painted, created, put together, etc. Mostly paint. And because I want to pass on the joys of paint pouring and crafting, I will be sending the black and red swipe box to Andy, and I'll be having a little holiday giveaway soon. Just keep posted. Keep creative, trust the flow, and until next time, TTFN.